Vanakkam, Namaste, hi everybody. I am Govind Karupgocha from Selamboli.in. It takes billions of years for a coal to become a diamond. It takes many hundred years for a seed to become a very solid tree. Like that, it takes a lot of man hours to get expertise, knowledgeable, get experienced in any area, in any domain you see. It needs sharp intelligence, wider knowledge and in-depth experience to analyze anything, guide people. Venu has everything. Social media is like a virtual jungle. We are seeing nowadays a lot of cockroaches and rats telling opinion, suggestions, comment, criticism, and they do all that blah blah and all. Beware of such people. You need lines, and Venu is one among them. It is good to listen to him. Let us see what he says about EIA 2020. As a professional, on the dot, I am asking one thing. Do you think this draft is super, that is perfect or good? Or it will be good with some changes? Or it is totally rubbish, scrap it? Which one you will say?
Yeah, so see, it will be, to just answer in one line, it will be good with some changes.
Like?
I'll tell you what those changes are, and I'll tell you where I'm coming from. Principally, I see that, a lot of, though they are TORs and they are terms of reference given for border projects and all that, we are dealing with ecologically sensitive areas. We feel the need for, the government to be given a relatively easy hand to take up defense-related or security-related projects in the borders. But we are dealing with the Himalayan border, or we are dealing with the Rann of Kutch, or we are dealing with the Thar Desert. Now, these are very ecologically sensitive regions. So, I think they have to go, the government has to do a little bit more to take some kind of expert advice in respect of those projects, because notwithstanding the fact that there are some defense requirements today, it is possible it might do some irreversible damage to the environment in about 15, 20 years. We don't know. Some road which is where not much thought has been given to the environmental aspects. From a security aspect, it may be an absolute necessary. Or there might be an airstrip that is conducted, which is also constructed, which is also exempt. Among the things which is exempt. Now, these are built in ecologically sensitive areas. So it is my wish that the government includes some additional safeguards over and above the terms of reference that they have mentioned. In these cases also, given that they are extremely sensitive. The Rann of Kutch is a very, very ecologically sensitive area, and so are the Himalayas. So that is one significant thing that I would like to appeal. I still feel that the process is too cumbersome for somebody who wishes to start an industry. I still feel the initial approval has to come through a far more simplified process. It does not mean dilution of the existing thing, but the process is extremely complicated at the moment. We've come a long way from what it was earlier. It used to take about a year and a half in the early days. It came down to a few months, and hopefully this will bring it to 1.5, 2 months or so for large projects. Hopefully. The moment there are too many controls, too many the restrictions, we will be hit. I'm repeating, I'm not against any safeguards. The safeguards will continue, but the process can still be, given that we have moved so far in technology, the process still has to be a lot less complicated, is my opinion. I'm certainly going to share the views on these two things with the committee.
Can you give a brief introduction about EIA 2020?
The primary reason why, I've been attracted to it, or should I say, I've had to go through it threadbare is because we support a lot of micro small industries. We, as part of the livelihood programs, we support a phenomenally large number of micro small industries, both in rural and urban areas. Over these past 20 years, I might have been involved in about 2,000 odd micro industries in rural areas. And currently in this crisis, working with about 600, 700. So my primary interest here is how does it make life easier for these small players in rural areas? And it goes a long way. The law goes a long way in terms of helping people who are in rural areas. So one part of it is environment, but these people were those who were affected unintentionally by a certain law. There is a certain law, certain safeguards which are required for corporates, large corporates, but then there is a large group of local enterprises. It could be minor irrigation projects, it could be potters, it could be people who are making clay tiles, it could be so many rural-based industries. You can go through the entire list. Now, all these industries have been freed as per this law of the need to obtain prior EC clearance. And this includes all the, silting, desilting projects under NREGA, rural road laying projects under NREGA, rural water laying projects under NREGA, desilting the canals for agriculture. It made no sense. I mean, this was long overdue. I don't know how somebody can object to these provisions at all. It goes a very long way. It does a beautiful job. The other two things that this notification does is, one, it brings in efficiency. Efficiencies because, or it attempts to, at least tries to bring in efficiency because it specifies very defined time frames for every activity that the government has to do. Now, these are not guidelines. These are very definite time frames. So on receipt of the application, it has to, some activity has to happen on the 10th day. Something has to happen by the 15th day. Something has to happen after 20 days after that. And then within 30 days, it has to go to the committee next level. They have to approve it within 30 days. They have to approve or reject. It's not necessary they have to approve it, but they have to give a decision. So it brings the TOTs, turnaround time for every single activity. And that's a wonderful thing that has come in this act. The third thing is it brings total transparency. So basically, these are the three components. A, all the small, micro, small, tiny village cottage industries, all of them individual entrepreneurs, anybody who's having hand-to-mouth existence, or they are all freed of this burden unnecessarily of having to go through various procedures. Even social welfare projects have to go through these procedures. They have been freed. So this is a huge thing which has happened. Huge thing which has happened. It brings efficiencies into the system in terms of turnaround times, very specific turnaround times for each and every single activity. And this is something which is good. It is not right on the government's part to keep applications pending simply because they are not doing it. So turnaround time is a very welcome step. They can either accept or reject it. And the third is it brings total transparency. Every single activity, every single document is uploaded onto the websites. Every single activity is minuted. Wherever possible, it is mandated that it has to be video recorded. There can be objections raised to it. So it brings total transparency. So these are the three big gains so far as I'm concerned.
In the timeline. So if someone wants to start a company, they can come, acquire a land, start, for example, start your chemical factory, need not take any approval or any certification, any compliance acceptance, just do the business. And if you find out your particular product process is polluting, then that particular company and the government official will sit together and decide what to do. We got getting polluted, we are polluting the area. Is this the way now it is going to work after this EIA 2020? This is what everybody is asking.
No, it is completely untrue, because the process of land acquisition has to happen, which is a normal process, and they have to make an application which considers every aspect of environment, which considers, especially for the list of industries that I have mentioned. I mean, if it is a IT project, you don't need these kind of clearances. They need some clearances in case of where they have these data storage facilities, because the data storage facilities are huge energy guzzlers. So they consume phenomenal amounts of power. So, but they are also working on, green power and all that. That's a lot more easier. But otherwise, most of the chemical industries, most of the construction projects, the road projects, you have to submit a very elaborate application, which has not changed since 2006. This application goes to the committee and copies are sent to the district and local authorities. There's a long list of local authorities. These authorities then call for a public meeting.
Okay.
And then the public meeting happens. They register their complaints. All this material goes into a website. Any third party like you and me can also register our complaint on that. All these suggestions, complaints, and the application is then forwarded to the environmental committee and the EIA committee of the state in case of B1 and B2 projects, and center in case of category A projects. So this was the same provision earlier also. So this committee then looks into the application, sees whether all the aspects have been considered in the application and whether safeguards have been built, and also looks into the various recommendations, suggestions, objections, complaints, whatever has been registered, and then give an approval, which is based on their own wisdom. They have the power to go to the project site, do an inspection, and then come back and give it. Only thing is that they have a time of 30 days to do it. So whatever they wish to, whether they want to approve it, they want to reject it, they can reject it also. They can conditionally approve it, say that if you build in these safeguards, then it will be approved. And then the project, then only that is the first requirement for starting. Environmental clearance is one of the requirements for the project to start. There are other requirements also in terms of licensing and all that. So those requirements are dealt with by the other departments.
So people say...
No, I don't see any dilution in process at all.
So people say after COVID, lot of foreign pharma companies are going to come only to make the process easy for them. To just like that come, open, start working. This is happening to support such very big large scale company. On a dot you can say is it true or not?
Okay. So pharma definitely, in most of when you're talking of very large companies, they would fall under category A. They have to go through the very rigorous process. There is a 6-stage process for pharma companies. They have to get the approval, and after the approval only they can start producing. And I think it is fair. There is no change insofar. I don't see where there is a change in respect of pharma. There is no change absolutely. In fact, it has been made more transparent. It has been made more transparent. That is the only addition that has been done in this case. Pharma, India traditionally is strong in drug manufacture. They are importing predominantly intermediates and bulk drugs in large quantities from China. And the attempt is that, we should start producing those things also ourselves, which is eminently possible. At least a significant part of that can be done here. So there is no reason why they will be allowed here. I don't see any provisions where, these kind of fresh projects have to go through the same process of scrutiny. They have to go through that. I don't know where it says that, they can just come and set up and pollute whichever way they want to and guzzle as much water as they want to. Where is it possible? They have to make an application. They have to say that this is our water requirement. They have to say how they are going to replenish that water. They have to, in many instances, the EIA recommends actually that you have to plant so many trees. And the safeguards are there. There is no change in that. I think it's absolute nonsense, whatever.
But why there are very strong opposition for this? Some segment or some quarter.
Okay. I think whether to determine whether the opposition is to this project is strong or it is not strong, it is not possible to determine based on the social media forwards that we receive. We have to understand, we have to go by the provisions of the Act. The provisions of the Act, if there is something which is likely to endanger the environment or which has made it easier for corporates to get it done, get the approvals done in a manner in which the environmental safeguards are compromised, I think then there is a reason, but I don't see any of the clauses which say that. It makes it slightly more efficient, so it is helpful to the corporates, but it doesn't dilute. It only says you have the right to challenge, you have the right to complain, you have the right not to approve, but do it, whatever you do it in a specific time frame. I have actually seen in one industry where, they wanted to utilize wasted heat. There's a lot of excess heat that is generated, especially in metal industries, metal processing industries. And they wanted to use that to generate energy. So, but they could not. I mean, they could, but they had to make these applications and get the approvals. Under this, where they do not use any additional fossil fuel and just use latent heat, energy, waste energy that comes out of these smelters, they are allowed without any permission. Research and development activities which are not for commercial production, specifically, where there is no commercial production. So it is very clear. The one I said, 22 item, thermal power plants using water heat recovery boilers. Now people think thermal power plants means coal-based. This is not. This using water heat recovery boilers, which means the latent heat which comes from this thing without any auxiliary fuel. Okay. So all these items, there are around 40 items. I don't want to go through it, but they are all pretty ordinary. I mean, now there are few items, 36 manufacturing unit under Ministry of Defense or strategic units for explosives, detonators, fuses, including. Now, these units are for defense purposes. There is a provision for them. They don't have to go through this process, but it does not mean they don't have to comply. Even these defense units do not have to make a formal application and get approved by the Environment Impact Assessment Committee, but they are standard TORs mentioned by the government, which says that these are the terms of reference for these kind of industries. These are the terms of reference for the border roads. So they have to follow those terms of reference. And if the local government wishes to add something to those terms of reference, it can add. So if there is a road which is being constructed, let's say in Mizoram, or let's say in Rann of Kutch. Rann of Kutch is an ecologically sensitive area, but unfortunately it is in the border. So it is possible there could be some defense-related activities there, but it doesn't mean they go scot-free. There's still a terms of reference which is specified, and the government of Gujarat or the government of Rajasthan can actually specify that the local body, even the district, can specify that they wish to add these additional safeguards in their terms of reference. So I think it's extremely friendly to small industries. It has taken care of almost all, and the number 40 says micro enterprises. In respect of, whole host of micro enterprises and small enterprises, projects against item numbers 10F, 24, 27, 11B, 20, 24, 25D, 27. I mean, it's a boon for small micro enterprises and small enterprises and even medium enterprises fall under B1 category. Basically what it does is all the other industries, they are classified as category A, category B1 or category B2. And category A goes through a very rigorous process. There are 6 stages of approval. Category B1 and B2 go through 3 and 2 stages of approval. So B2 is essentially smaller ones of the same size. But there are certain categories of industries like nuclear power, which whatever, irrespective of the size, all of them come under category A. So I think they have taken a lot of care in all these classifications, but we have to admit none of us are experts in all these. There's a long list of projects, and I'm not an expert, nor do I know of anybody who's an expert in the entire list of those projects. So if anybody has a particular objection to some certain project being allowed to be, even if it is small, being allowed under B1, I think they should take up those kind of objections independently. But I think as a larger document, it's a wonderful document. I don't see why it should be. I see a lot of nonsense being spoken by others.
So nonsense means those who are talking against the CAA 2020, right? That's what.
No, I'm not. It's not a blanket thing I just said there is a lot of nonsense circulating. Mm-hmm. There are many respected people also who raise their objections. Unless they raise it specifically against certain clauses, we will not be able to address it. But if somebody says, people can come extract gold and take it, we all know there is no gold in India. Where are the gold mines in India? So, I mean, that's the height of nonsense. So, I don't think that is worthy of a response.
So, on the dot, you mean to say this EIA 2020 is not opening the door. Come everybody, do whatever you want, get lost from our side, loot India. It is not saying so. That's what you are telling. Number 2, you are telling it is also taking care of MSME sectors. They have taken care of everything. Then, why Jairam Ramesh is against it?
Okay. Now Jairam Ramesh, he was the Rural Development Minister for 3-4 years. I had the opportunity to interact with him one-on-one. He also visited our training center in Bastar region in Chhattisgarh. We had the opportunity to share a stage together. He was, more importantly, he was the Environment Minister, 2007 to 2010. He is now part of the standing committee, parliamentary standing committee. I think he is the chairman, if I'm right, of environment. So you have to look at it. But whatever I know, the objections that he's raised is A, it takes the powers away from the state. I could not see anything that, I mean, now I have to look into the specific clauses that he is referring to when he says it takes the state. The only place where the center says it can appoint the state committee is where the state abdicates its duty. The state has abdicated its duty to appoint the committee. It says it does not do it in time, within the given time. And if the state is not able to do it, the center has the right to do that. So except for that, I don't think there is any other place within this entire document, even if you go through the classes where the state is there, insofar as people's rights being taken away, I don't see anything at all. There is, in fact, a greater, the additions are, you have to videograph. The additions are, everything has to be put on open domain. No, these are not great innovations. I mean, in today's digital age, I think every single thing has to be on open domain. It has to be on public view. And that is all this act has done. It has done nothing great. I mean, it has just done what it has to be done. And there were some complications between 2014 and 17 because of these lacunae in the law. And to address these complications, it has used recent technology. So in fact, it has strengthened, in my opinion, it has strengthened the ability of the common man to raise any issues. At the same time, it has helped small projects which were unnecessarily troubled because of this provision. So there is a larger provision, and they say there is a collateral damage to some people. So these people, these small projects were facing collateral damage. That has been eliminated. So anybody who's talking of corporates, I mean, I think they are anti. Basically, they have not read this. They are anti this thing. There was this girl, and then there was a Tamil actor, the second-rung actor, well-known. I mean, I didn't see any point that he was mentioned. They're basically telling things which are very general profanities. I mean, absolute nonsense, which I would call. When they say that, people can come, take something and run away. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And we are not living in a banana republic. So even the Chennai-Salem highway, for all the various views, it is still being contested in the court. People are fighting hard. I mean, whether we agree with the people who are fighting against it or not, they have a choice. They are able to fight it tooth and nail. It is not that they don't have a choice. We don't live in a banana republic. So they have to clearly understand that. So I don't know. I can only assume that Mr. Jairam Ramesh's statement is a political statement, unless I get to see the details. Whatever I have read on the newspapers, they are general things which again state more or less the same things. And it is a political statement which is natural because he is a leading member of the opposition party.
So one more thing. So I agree with you that the cockroaches and rats of social media who are doing blah blah and all, we cannot ignore people like Jairam Ramesh. And also, when Jairam Ramesh says something, is there any structured answers are given by the government, or it doesn't work in that way?
We can. So, number one, when Jairam Ramesh says, these are the three things. And so far as I know that, he said the powers of the states have been taken away. More than once I have explained in today's things that they have not been taken away. They remain intact. The common man, he does not have a right to object. No, it is not true. I have explained again with the various provisions that actually allow him to object. His case has been strengthened. That is what I feel. The third is there are a number of small industries, which have been allowed. So I see greater transparency. I see an attempt to increase efficiency. We'll have to wait and see whether it actually becomes efficient on the ground. And I see that, definitely it is going to help the small enterprises because there is no way anybody can harass them hereafter.
Is there any comment made by Jayanthi Natarajan?
Okay. No, I think we'll be entering political domain if we get into that. I have not heard Jayanthi Natarajan mention anything here.
He was the ex-environment minister, right?
She was. She was the environment minister for about a year before she was replaced by Mr. Veerappa Moily. And that period, when she was the environment ministry, a large number of projects miraculously got early approval. So, which raised a lot of eyebrows. on how projects which were stalled for many years suddenly got the environmental clearance during such a short period. But beyond that, I think she didn't have a very, her tenure in the Environment Ministry was for a very short time. So it won't, there's nothing that we could comment on. Now it is Mr. Prakash Javadekar, who's the Environment Minister, but we have to look at what kind of safeguards are there. Whether it will allow these people to trample and do as they wish, or whether there are adequate safeguards for the common man to stand up and object. Okay. So that is there. That's all we have to look at.
You say common man can stand for anything, but people are telling if this EIA 2020 comes, common man cannot raise a voice. Is it true?
It is not true. Because, there is a whole section. If you look at this document, again, there is a schedule, and following that, you will see an entire appendix which devotes on the public consultation procedure for public consultation. It runs into several pages, and it details in great detail the entire procedure. Now, I have seen from the 2006 document that it only strengthens. Now, some of the things that used to happen in the past is that, if the number of people, it is typically, within a 5-kilometer radius of the project site, people have to be informed, and they can come and let us know if there are any objections to it. Now, if there is not much impact, not many people do come. And it is easy, probably, in some instances, for corporates to pay off a few key guys so that the others can be silent. It is also possible that, the hearings, the government officials can be hand in glove with the. So there is a hearing that is conducted, public hearing. But we know that, these events can actually be doctored and, moved along in a manner in which we want it, unless somebody is ready to stand up in the crowd and raise his voice. Now, what is the protection against these things? You can actually go online and register your protest. Now, the entire event is under the current law, it is being videographed. They have to put it up. It is minuted. They have to put it up online. Somebody can go online and say that we were asked to keep silent. We were told by thugs that, we were to keep silent. We actually wanted to raise this. They can do it anonymously. When you go online, you can do it anonymously.
Oh.
So there is a lot of, it gives a phenomenal amount of transparency compared to what was happening earlier. The earlier provisions were also done with good intent, but there were these lacunae where people could actually manage these events. You can manage these events. If there are hardly 50, 100 people, you can easily manage these events. But even if you do manage, there is a provision for you to come back and register online. And that's a very powerful tool. Online is a very powerful tool. And it has to be there for 30 days.
So it goes for auditing?
Sorry? Yeah, it does go for auditing. It does go for audit. So the once the application is made, and then the common people, they place whatever objections or suggestions or objections they have. It need not be regarding just the environmental matters. It can be regarding relief and rehabilitation also, which is what is the case in most instances. They might want a higher amount as relief and rehabilitation. They might want some training to be done as relief and rehabilitation, whatever. So, or they might want these people to build for them some kind of an enterprise, some manufacturing facility, something where they can pursue an alternate livelihood. So, it is not just about environment. It is also about their relief and rehabilitation. They can register their suggestions, their objections. This is then, all these recommendations then go to the committee. the EIA committee, state level EIA committee, and the committee sits through it. If it is category A projects, it is always then 2006, and now it is always the center which does the first approval, and thereby the monitoring is done by the state. For category B1 and B2, it's the state, and in case of some projects, it is the district. So these committees then evaluate. If necessary, they go and verify on the environmental impact reported. And these committees are supposed to have experts from various fields. So there'll be a water expert, there'll be somebody who's an expert on minerals, somebody who's an expert on finance, so many things. So all these people have the right to go and inspect, verify. They can go back to the people and ask for their objections, what are the basis on which these objections have been raised, and then they grant the approval. The prior environmental clearance for the project is granted by them. So there's a process, there's a due process, and I don't see any change. I only see that it has been strengthened.
Strengthened. When you read about what people are talking about, I mean, not all the people are talking about EIA 2020, the way they're talking about, how do you feel actually?
I feel sad not because people are objecting to EIA 2020. Had there been some specific objections which stated that, these are the provisions in this draft, which I find objectionable. Like I mentioned two provisions. I don't find it objectionable. I see that could be a possible lacuna. We might destroy the ecosystem there. So if they find some provisions of the law objectionable, if they had pointed to that, it would have been good. But a lot of thing is working with emotions. So very base emotions. A lot of the videos that are circulating, they deal with very, very base emotions of the people, and they try to mislead them through a campaign which is, I would say, entirely false. It's entirely false. I should have the courage if I say that it is protecting or it is conducive to small businesses in rural areas. I should have the courage to tell you that, these are the 30, 40 exceptions. And these are the kind of industries that have been favored in this. Like, the clay pots or the tile manufacturers, or, all these small people who work in the villages, or the micro enterprises which have been exempted blanket in clause 40 of these exemptions. So I can claim that. Now, if without any proof, I say that, or without referring to any particular clause or any of the points mentioned in the draft, if I make some claims, then it is incorrect. And I find I think it looks cheap that, when people try to exploit the carnal instinct, that they say that, this is, you'll lose your water, you won't get water, you won't get air and things like that. You want to straight away dismiss it, but unfortunately you can't dismiss it because I'm part of many groups. All of us are WhatsApp groups. And there's a group which is entirely engineers, and some of these ridiculous forwards have come there multiple times. So it indicates that people who have 20, 30, 35 years of experience, who are technically, who have a technical qualification, still fall for these kind of propaganda. That's a bit saddening. So it makes me really sad.
So to end this, do you have anything else to say?
No, I've said whatever that is needed to be said. Basically, all of you go through the draft. It is available on the Ministry of Environment site. It is not a very complicated document. The details are there. If you read it once, twice, thrice, you will understand it. If you know any specific clause that is not objectionable, please do there's time till August 11th. There's a email ID which is given in that. Please send your objections to that. If you want, share those suggestions or objections or complaints, whatever you want to do, share that in social media, most welcome. Talk to people about it with points. It's a good thing to do. But that's all. I mean, there is a window open to all of us now to actually raise specific complaints. Now, if somebody writes to the ministry that, we don't want this law, or if they take a signature campaign, the ministry won't be bothered about it. If I have to raise an objection, it has to be specific. I have to say that, this particular clause is harmful to these kind of industries. So please don't do this. That is the way it has to be taken up. Or you have to say that 20 days is not enough. You make it 30 days. Or so these are, and there has to be some rationale behind why you are telling 30 days. So those kind of very specific suggestions is what will be taken up by the ministry. If somebody says, down, that doesn't make any sense, it won't even be considered by any ministry. So please do register. Go through the document and register. That is the only thing I want to tell people.
Thank you very much, Venu. Best wishes.
Thank you.